And we're live. Episode 8. Ladies and gentlemen, episode 8 of Development Now podcast. I'm excited. My co-host is excited. The guest is excited. The host of Heavens are excited. My children, yet unborn, they're excited. Everybody's excited about episode 8. And someone's wondering, this is episode 8, right? That means there was 1, there was 2, there was 3, there was 4, there was 5, 6, and 7. They are right there on the YouTube channel. Just, click on them. They're not running away anytime soon. My name is Bumi Afolabi. This is Development Now, DevNow podcast. Some call me Mr. Speaker. Some call me Mr. Development. Recently, someone started calling me Dr. Development.
Ooh,
I said, let me get my PhD first. Before you start probing, where did I get it from? But anyway, on Development Now, what do we do? It's a 360-degree media platform. We showcase the great, amazing, laudable work that development organizations do, how they do it, the challenges they encountered, and what have you. That is exactly what we do on Development Now. So it's always a deep dive into their world, whether it's the legal space, civic engagement, media and journalism, environment where you have climate change. It goes on and on and on like that. Okay, so sit tight. We have an amazing episode for you today. As always, I'm not alone. I have my co-host, your good friend, your Gen Z wannabe.
oh wow!
The one, the only, Uguna Uwajumugu.
Bumi, thank you for the awesome welcome as usual, and welcome to another exciting episode of Dev Now. This is episode 8. We've talked to a number of amazing organizations, and we're going to do it right again today. So stay tuned, don't go anywhere. Bumi has said it all, and let's dive into this conversation.
So today we have the executive director of the International Center for Investigative Reporting. You've seen their logo somewhere, you've seen their report somewhere, you've probably run into their website somewhere, you've seen them on X because they're very, very active online. He is the one and only Mr. Dayo Aiyetan.
He didn't watch it.
He
didn't watch it.
So for the dev nowadays, there's a story behind the name.
Inside joke.
I think I should just tell you the story, then we'll get into it. So the first time I had the privilege of meeting our guest, if you're Yoruba, you understand. That day I was just I was just enjoying. I was anchoring an event. It was a dissemination.
Please
event.
don't tell me you said it in the event.
Oh, I did. I said it.
And I corrected him.
I said it, and he was like, "No, guy, the world is not coming to." So if you're Yoruba, Aiyetan means that the world is coming to an end. Aiyetan, means of course the world
Spreading.
spreading, continuing and all of that. So we're excited to have him here today. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
And so a brief about ICIR. So instead of saying International Center for Investigative Reporting back-to-back, ICIR, okay? So I'm going to be saying ICIR a lot. Founded in 2010 and, of course, located here in Abuja, Nigeria. And the ICIR is a non-for-profit media organization dedicated to employing robust, investigative journalism to promote accountability, transparency, and good governance. So he's here. He's the visionary. He's going to tell us more about ICIR. That one is just if you go on their website and click about us, that's what you're going to see there. But I'm sure he has more to say about us. Do you understand what I mean? About us, ICIR, as opposed to what is just on the website. So over to you, sir.
Okay, so thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. So about ICIR started in 2010, like you said, but we actually started, real work at the website in 2012. So the vision of the ICIR is basically to build a culture of accountability reporting in Nigeria. And that comes from, knowledge about, the corruption that this country faces. A former ICPC, and ICPC is Independent Corrupt Practices Commission. A former ICPC chairman said once that the biggest threat to democracy in Nigeria is corruption. But I go further to say it's not just corruption, because it's not just corruption that we're all dealing with, it's impunity. And impunity is the fact that somebody in public face, in a place of privilege, knows that he can breach public trust, he can steal money, and nothing will happen. And so we thought at the beginning, as we were starting, that if we could, build this culture where the exposure of corruption and impunity increases using the instrumentality of the media. So at that point, not many media houses had the capacity to do any kind of investigative data journalism.
Yeah.
And we were doing something around that, but we thought if many newsrooms in Nigeria had the capacity to scrutinize budgets, scrutinize contract processes, scrutinize a whole lot of data and information around the business of government, then the capacity of the media, the ability of the media to hold power to account will increase. And then we will be able to fight or reduce corruption and impunity. And so that is the basic reason for setting up the ICIR. But we do basically two things. We do, several things now. We do our own investigative reporting work, which is published on our website, icirnigeria.org. But the bigger work that we do, so it's a non-profit, and we do get funding from different organizations, MacArthur, Ford, Osiwa, International Budget Partnership, National Endowment. We get some good funding, but we are like a warehouse for the funding for the development of the media. So a whole lot of work we do. We've trained, I can say now comfortably, thousands of journalists. But if you train journalists and they go back to their newsrooms, nothing happens. Because investigative reporting requires commitment, it requires time, it requires resources. It's not the run-of-the-mill journalist who wants to undertake. It's also sometimes risky who wants to undertake that kind of journalism. So we do training for them. We also offer what we call mentoring. So while you're on the project, there is a senior editor working with you. If you're on the field, there's the editor who is working with you as a mentor. If you need to, ask questions, you don't know how to go about it. If you need data, where to, and so on. But we also provide the resources for journalists to do investigative reporting work. I can only say, however much you need to do any particular investigative project, we will give to you. We work in different thematic areas. The MacArthur grant, for example, is to do accountability work around procurement issues, budget and procurement. Because again, I'll go back to the ICPC data that says that 60% of the money that is stolen from the public kitty comes through contract processes. And so MacArthur grant is scrutinizing contract processes, not just at the federal level, but as a matter of fact, what I'm happy about most about that grant is that for the last 4 years or so, we have looked at sub-regional corruption. And that is the level where, we have had the most difficulty, because state governments are tin gods. In some places, even commissioners had never been asked critical questions about how they are spending money. In one state in the South, one of the journalists on our project went and asked the commissioner, he was doing a story, questions about how the government had spent money. And he was shocked. And he said, "How dare you?"
Public funds.
Yes. And he said, "How dare you? Don't come asking me." And the guy, told him, "I'm doing my job." Section 22 of the Nigerian Constitution mandates the Nigerian media to hold power to account. Government, its institutions, its officials. So the bigger work we do really is to, develop capacity for the larger Nigerian media to be able to hold government to account. We also, from 2020, arising from COVID-19. The COVID is COVID-19
Yeah, it
now.
was 19.
It's
Yeah.
it was so devastating. Now we are forgetting what it was even called. So it came with a lot of misinformation. In fact, we called it an information epidemic. So we in the ICIR, without funding at that time, we started Fact Check Hub, which has grown into its own entity. So the Fact Check Hub actually heads is the secretariat of the Fact Checking Coalition Organizations of Nigeria, where you have different fact checking organizations in Nigeria. So that's it about the ICIR. We've worked in Nigeria, we've worked in Ghana, we've worked in Kenya, we've worked in other parts of the... And interestingly, we are now also set up in the US. There is ICIR incorporated in the US.
Oh, nice.
Yes, which is also looking at now, not just Nigeria, but Africa-wide projects. Because what the vision we have is for the same thing we're doing in Nigeria, replicating it in as many. So it's not about setting up ICR in every African country, but building local capacity for them to be able to do what we're doing in Nigeria. So that's it.
Wow, fantastic. That's a lot.
It is a lot.
I know our focus is going to be more on ICIR today, but for the Gen Zs,
Oh God. My people.
Well, aren't we all Gen Zs?
I mean,
The day you met me today, I met you. So if you insist, no problem.
so I just want us to backtrack a bit for the Gen Zs who don't know where you came from before you set up ICIR. You were with Tell Magazine
Yes, I was.
for,
For 10 years?
About 10 years.
Wow.
So maybe you just want to talk a bit about your stint at Tell Magazine, what Tell Magazine stood for. Like I said, that's why I mentioned the Gen Zs. So I'm sure you understand the approach, to talk for that question.
Yeah, so interestingly, even now, people say that I refer to my days in Tell a lot, even working in the ICR. And that's true because the foundation for what I do, at the ICR started in Tell. Tell had a tradition of excellent journalism. Tell Magazine, I was there for 10 years. I started as an assistant editor, then associate editor, senior associate editor. I became Abuja bureau chief. And I left in 2010 to set up the ICIR. And so why did I leave? Tell had that tradition of critical reporting. Tell would send you anywhere, to do any kind of reporting you wanted to do. There was resources, to do the kind of journalism we wanted to do in Tell. But increasingly, the economic downturn hit us, and that went down.
Yeah. Sorry to take the wind off you. Talking about sending you anywhere to do any kind of reporting. Do you want to share one or two that were probably life-threatening?
Wow.
Why you choose
Because Tell Magazine was, Tell Magazine is Tell Magazine.
Sincerely speaking,
Yeah, that's why I mentioned
So let me tell you one. There was a clash between Yorubas and Hausas somewhere in Lagos State, and I think I and Shola Osunkeye had to cover it, and you will find people shooting and all that, and you had to. It was like you were covering a war, and you had to duck and all that. But that is, sincerely speaking, you're talking about possible physical harm. A journalist putting himself or herself in harm's way. But sincerely speaking, that is, if you ask journalists like Christian Amanpour and journalists who have covered war, that's not what scares them. I was in a fellowship at the University of Michigan in 2017-2018, and part of our process was, as we were leaving, you would have a public presentation, and there was a journalist who came from Spain who showed a video and I said, I know I'm a courageous journalist. I've done some damn risky journalism, work, reporting, I could never have done what he did. He showed us the video he shot with him wearing body camera, carrying a camera, and you will see him running, covering, people running helter-skelter. You will hear shooting, and then you will see, sand, maybe a rocket had fallen, and he continued doing his job. That's the kind of risk, physical risk, that journalists, come across. But that's not the kind of risk that I'm afraid of. The kind of risk that journalists face that really scares me is, you're working on a story of a governor who has stolen, let's say, 10. When we started, we were talking about 100 million.
Yeah.
And it was big money. There was a lot of uproar. But now, they're still in trillions. A governor who has stolen, let's say, 1 trillion naira, he will do anything because there's so much at stake. He will do anything, including kill you, to stop that. This morning, I woke up and I had to deal with, because we have journalists all over the place, I had to deal with a journalist who had come under threat, who had refused to compromise, and we have had to ferret him from where he was located. Wow. That, for me, is scarier, thinking of journalists. I have journalists who are in Kebbi State, who are in Zamfara State, who are in bandit-infested areas. Fortunately, nothing, by the grace of God, nothing has happened to any of our journalists, but that's what scares me most. So in TEL, we did all kinds of, risky work, particularly because TEL was known for political reporting.
Exactly.
We will report about Atiku, about Obasanjo, about when Yaradua was in Germany, and everybody in the villa was lying about what was happening, and the ministers were saying, we're going to see him. And you remember they brought him back and put him in a cage. Wicked people, and some people say he's waving, he's smiling, and all that. TEL went and spoke to somebody, a former head of state, who had been to Germany to see him, and came back. And that's why I loved TEL. TEL had sources in the highest echelons of society, in government, And we came to talk to this person, and he told us he's gone. He's a vegetable. And TEL wrote the kind of definitive story that we used to write. And that was what settled it. Nigerians go. So it's that kind of journalism I brought and I want to do with. And I tell my people in the ICIR, it doesn't matter who has done any story. Our attitude should be the attitude we had in TEL, that if we have not done it, that story has not been done.
Something I picked up from everything you've said, and you've spoken so well. You spoke about impunity, and you've spoken about investigative journalism. And for every man's work, I believe there should be some form of reward, whether it's monetary, whether it's honor. How do you navigate the rewards of investigative journalism when you're being compounded with impunity? Impunity being the audacity to do it again. Yeah. So when somebody's being exposed, it doesn't serve as a deterrent to the next person, because since the beginning of time, or since I experienced Nigeria, since I was born, there's been stories upon stories upon stories of people who have been caught, or just different stories of what happens to them. Yeah. So sometimes it feels like the work you are doing, I'm not saying it doesn't have any effect, because it does.
Oh yeah, I understand what you're saying.
People don't seem to really suffer the consequences. Yeah. So how does that affect you and affect your organization?
And then how do we now then still continue the work we're doing?
Yeah.
So I understand what you're saying
this in
perfectly.
2010. That's just ICR.
Yes.
So how have you been going?
So let me start by saying this. More than any journalist, perhaps the only person that would say that he did as much as I did about 2 former governors that we sought to jail, Joshua Daye and Jolly Yame. I had files on them. I went to Plateau State. I went to, Taraba. We did the stories. These guys were imprisoned. We had a good, at least, to answer the question, whatever happens to them, we had 2 examples. Yeah, something happened to them. The court process came to an end and they were jailed. What happened? A few years ago, our former president Muhammadu Buhari, the commander-in-chief of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, released them for political reasons. And many people tell me that, he was is he a dummy? Doesn't he think? They said they went to impress on him for political reasons, to release them. What Buhari was telling EFCC and the anti-corruption community was that our job counts for nothing. That down the road, they can free people who are jailed. For the media, because that's what I said to the EFCC chairman at that time, where they were also telling journalists and the media who work on accountability issues, is that your work counts for nothing. Like you said.
And puts you back in danger.
Nothing will happen. I know what I suffered, traveling to those places. I know how many people tried to bribe me. One commissioner from one of the states brought 1 million naira to Tell Magazine office in Lagos. In his booth.
What year was this?
That must have been 20. I can't remember now. But I remember we were still in, is it Oregon Road or Acme Road?
That's so that
he's trying to determine how much, because 1 million naira now is like 100,000.
1 million is maybe like 10 million now.
So that's back.
And I rejected it because the first lesson we teach investigative reporters is you can't be doing accountability journalism and enmesh yourself in the brown envelope. They just buy you. Yes. And so to come back to the question you asked, I gave that Joshua Daye and Iyame example as the height of it. What discourages us is not just that, it is the threats and so on. Now, you know what we're facing most? What we call strategic lawsuits against public participation.
Strategic lawsuits against public.
They are just frivolous lawsuits. We have done our work. There's nothing in the story. We have done everything, evidence-based reporting. But because this guy has money, he just wants to deal with us. And there are several cases now that we're dealing with. But you say, what is the reward? The reward can never be. I have been offered millions of naira. I've been offered 100,000 when 100,000 was real money. But you have to make up your mind that money does not matter. You understand, in this business, your needs are little, my needs are little. I'm comfortable. I don't need 100 million naira to live my life. But the little wins we have is what gladdens my heart. So we are able to, in Osun State, easy example, in Osun State, a former deputy speaker takes 2.6 billion naira. Billion. To do project in his constituency, a water project. In the first instance, his constituency didn't tell him they needed a water project. They needed other things, roads, schools, and so on. But because he had a water company. He rigged it so that they will do a water, and it took 2.6 billion naira. And he didn't do anything. And a constituent.
So he wanted patronage for his company, and he still didn't do anything.
A constituent came to us. We funded an investigation which was published, and now I can talk about beyond journalism, why we are a non-profit. We just don't do our journalism and leave it. We publish stories and it stays on our website. What happens? And so we are collaborating with NGOs. We are collaborating with people in government institutions, because no matter how terrible civil servants are, there are Nigerians like us who want a better deal for Nigeria. So we're working with them. Serap took up the case, to cut a long story short. ICPC stepped in. The guy was called and he was made to go back and spend the money in his constituency. But we insisted that, yes, he has put the money back. Of course, he wouldn't have put back all the money. But we insisted that he had to be arrested and prosecuted because he had breached the law. But you know how government works. Oh no, what is more important? What do they call it? Plea bargain or something like that.
Yeah.
They recover the money and public good has been served and so on. So those are the kind of stories. Why are we in this business? Section 22 says that the media should hold the government accountable on behalf of the people. And we are talking about people and communities. So if we are able to, make changes that affect people and communities. For example, if we do a story about somebody who has taken, like it happened in Kano, a river basin development that they quashed and we did a story, and the community, they went back to the community has light or water and so on. Those are the little wins that really gladden one's heart. Wow. They are far between, but we do get, impact like that. And that's the reward for this kind of job.
Wow. Uguna, back to you.
So, given the last, the last 10 years, and within the last 10 years, we've had two governments, the current one and the last one. And I feel there's a popular journalist, I'm not going to mention his name, and he's spoken deeply about various figures in politics and what they've done and how they've gotten away with it and how his life has been put in danger. And there's also another section of people who also say to him that he's more of a sensationalist journalist. So how do you say you do training for your journalists? How do you court? Because sometimes there's some stories that pop off and it might seem like, okay, this story has been cooked and spiced, maybe for public uproar. Is there ever a time where you feel it might be okay to add a bit of spice to a story if you think it might create more of an uproar? So let's say somebody killed somebody, right? Let's say that's the story. But you feel, because of the plea bargain nature of Nigeria, it might not be enough to get this guy. It might not be enough to get this guy. Is there ever a time where, just pad it a little, so maybe maybe people might actually pay attention?
No, so that would be irresponsible journalism, and we preach against that.
Because say you do trainings for your...
Yeah, so we can... So there are quite a number of us who do, because there's such a huge knowledge gap in the Nigerian media, and it shows in our work.
Yeah.
And that's where there's the other side of it is the ethical issues, the brown envelope issues arising from non-payment of salaries and so on and so forth. But I'm someone who is terribly critical of the Nigerian media. I'm someone who is terribly, terribly critical of Nigerian journalists, because I and my organization have been at the receiving end of media corruption, whereby, we give money to journalists who see the money. Just yesterday, I reported a journalist to, I don't want to mention the name, but one federal government funded media house. The guy took our money, 300,000 naira, and he just wants to treat it as if it was brown envelope, and he has not delivered donor money. So I say that sometimes I see what happens in the media, in the newspapers and so on. Sometimes we get away with murder, but we need to watch it. Why? Because increasingly, like I said, slaps. They are slapping us right, left and center with all kinds of things. And again, unfortunately, you said the last 10 years, you talked about the last government. The Buhari government was woeful in terms of media freedom. Woeful. As bad as under the military. I worked in, before I worked in Concord. The military closed down Concord. And so I know what I'm talking about. The Buhari years were perhaps the worst before the Tinubu government came. But today, the Tinubu government is showing itself as worse than the Buhari government. And they have used the Cyber Act, to hound journalists. We did a petition to the president, and we're also engaging people in government that what has happened in the last 6 months is such a huge threat to our democracy, because you know why? Any country, any society where the media cannot be allowed to thrive, democracy is endangered, because the media is at the very heart of the foundation of democracy. Now, excuse me. Now, what has happened? A number of journalists, because they have done critical reporting about state institutions or the leadership. For example, Daniel Ojukwu, who works for FIJ is Foundation of Investigative Journalism, was arrested because FIJ published a story on the special advisor to the president on MDGs. Read the story. Absolutely evidence-based story. And by the way, my organization has written several stories about the same office where they are awarding contracts to non-existing, I say it with all sense of responsibility, companies that are either not registered or they don't have the capacity, and then contracts are not done. So we do our job. And because this person is in government, he just writes to the police, and the police, they are not arresting journalists, they are kidnapping journalists. The NIA too. For over a week, we didn't know where our colleague was. The NIA arrested, they kidnapped him. Myself and my reporter have also been victims. The act, the Cybercrime Act, has been amended, but they are still using it, saying that, if you write anything and somebody feels offended, they can come after you. The act now says, if you write anything that can lead to public disorder. Do you know that the last we heard, the police? So now it is getting worse, and that's why we wrote.
So you're not allowed to you're not allowed to say anything that could incite maybe a protest, or maybe someone's upset about it, even if it's the truth.
So now let me tell you the danger. Shebi, we were complaining that we publish stories and they come after us. You know what happened a couple of weeks back? A journalist is investigating a story about a company, goes to the MD of the company to ask questions about the story.
The story, yeah.
The company MD knows somebody in the police, and goes to report that this journalist has come to ask me questions, and the police go after him. So now we are not even being allowed to do investigations, which is a constitutional mandate. And you see why I say it's a danger to democracy. The president, ironically, is a media owner. President Tinubu owns the Nation newspapers in Nigeria. He owns TVC, and I guess he owns Max Radio. He is invested. He's an invested party in the success of the media. He can't be allowing this to happen. So, even though I am critical of the media, I am saying that also the government, if a journalist has done wrong, take him to court.
Do not kidnap.
Do not kidnap them. Do not keep them. When we were invited, initially we told them we won't go because we looked at the act and we knew that somebody that we exposed, a former IG that we exposed, was using the police against us. But our lawyer said, let's go. We don't have anything to hide. Do you know that others came from this person that we had exposed while he was IG? And this guy sent something to the current IG, who sent it to the Cybercrime Center. And others came. After we had given our statement, others came that they shouldn't release us. Until Femi Falana, who was in London, and this person all stepped in. Do you know the guys you're dealing with? You'll be in trouble. We were not released until 9 p.m. And you know they don't release people on bail at 9 p.m. We were released at 9:15 at night for doing our job, for exposing corruption in the police.
Wow. That's a lot.
Okay, so now let's talk a little about social media. Yeah. In the last 10 years, we've seen a boom in social media. You know, sometimes my mom, this is my mom's tradition. She walks into my room first thing in the morning. She just walks into my room. And then sometimes, let's say it's a Saturday and I'm still sleeping, she just takes up the remote, turns on the TV. And I'm like, first of all, you can do this in your own room. Why you choose to do it in my own room, I still do not understand.
It's bonding.
Perhaps it's bonding.
Mother-daughter time.
Yeah.
Shout out to mommy. Give me a close-up on that. Shout out to Ugona's mommy. If you meet Ugona's mommy, she's such a lovable person. You know those people that you just come around them and the aura around them is just cool. It's just loving. So
that's where I get my love and aura from.
You are making me want to meet her.
You may meet her.
You may meet her. She might come here. Yeah. But what I'm saying is that she turns on the TV and I'm like, mommy, like, she's like, wake up, listen to news. And I'm like, Mom, I get my news here. It's like the story you're about to watch, I've probably heard it. I've already read it. Yeah, so that's the point I was trying to make. And there's a lot of talk about social media journalism and it being irresponsible and how we can incite all kinds of riots and protests. And even now as we speak, there's some people in the 3-arm zone who are considering a social media bill and all of that. What are your thoughts on that? Do you feel like social media in Nigeria particularly, forget the rest of the world, in Nigeria particularly, and everything we're going through might be a little we might be using it irresponsibly? Or do you think we need that heat from social media?
Social media, like the internet, is a double-edged sword, and like AI too. It has its advantages, it has its disadvantages. And you said social media journalism. Social media is social media, journalism is journalism. And that's why I'm critical about some people who call themselves journalists. I say that I don't see them as journalists if you're not practicing within the ambit of the ethics of journalism.
Yeah.
Because there are social media influencers, there are people actually who do some journalism on social media. Because what is and that's what I tell journalists. Journalism is become such a fluid thing. The definitions of news, journalism, media is so fluid now.
Very fluid.
For example, let's say a Aproko doctor who does a lot of educational work.
Yeah, social behavioral change communication.
Yes. And some of the stuff he does, you will regard as news. But the difference for me, why I say social media is social media, journalism is journalism. Journalism has its codes of ethics. A non-journalist who is doing some kind of news on social media doesn't subscribe to those ethical norms. That's the difference. So, like I said, it's a double-edged sword. When now I think you're talking about regulation, regulating the social media. You know, the danger there is that, like the Cyber Act crime, for example, people in government will use any kind of regulatory framework for selfish reasons. Let me give you one example. And pardon me, I am blunt and I mention names.
We want you to be.
When Lai Mohammed was Minister of Information, there was this Ewe exponent in Osun State. Ewe is, the oral tradition, I don't know how else to. A poet. Is a local poet.
Yeah.
So they do chants, they praise people, and they can also use poetry
Like a
to
griot.
criticize, And this poet, did a rendition that was critical of Lai Mohammed. And the next thing, and put it on social media. And the next thing is that this guy was arrested. Why? They say, aggravated somebody through social media and blah, blah, blah. If there's a social media bill, look at what is already happening.
Without one. So imagine what
Yes,
would be
without
with
one. You remember the company that's having this lawsuit eventually with, I didn't want to mention a name, with...
We've mentioned the name here on this platform, on the previous episode.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
Beyond that, a couple of weeks ago, they also said somebody was picked up because a Nollywood actress felt aggrieved because of... So, I think that there are existing laws, libel laws, defamation laws that can be applied if somebody libels you. It does not matter where, whether on social media, whether in a newspaper or wherever. There are existing laws, there are existing frameworks to deal with this thing. So I don't subscribe to, because what usually happens is, just like they did with the Cybercrime Act, if we're not vigilant, they will smuggle into those laws things that are self-serving for them. It is not social media act that is important. The important laws that they will not enact, asset forfeiture law. Yes, the most important law that we need to enact in Nigeria is the asset forfeiture law. If we enact an asset forfeiture law, corruption will reduce drastically because...
For the benefit
for
of
the
those who
benefit
have
of
no
the
idea
audience,
of
could
what
you
that
speak
is,
more on
Yes.
asset forfeiture?
So for years, we have been advocating for an asset forfeiture law. It has not happened because the people who should enact the law, members of the National Assembly, will be so terribly affected. Because what the law says is that, the EFCC Act empowers the EFCC. It's just that it's not doing its job. As if you go to several parts of Abuja, you will see houses, and I'm not saying in one or two, entire
estates,
entire areas, parts of Abuja. If you're going to town and you branch off from Nasarawa side, and you branch off Abacha Barracks Bridge, turn left and come to town from that area, the whole of that area, if you see gigantic estates, nobody lives there. It's money laundering. The EFCC Act allows the EFCC to come to you. Number one, you show that if you have such property, where did you get the money? What kind of business do you do? Are you paying tax or whatever? But that's not what we want with the asset forfeiture law. The asset forfeiture law we advocate for is, if you have asset like, let's say this hotel now, and you can't show evidence of earning money legitimately, paying tax, it is automatically taken off you. It becomes government property. But it won't happen because the people who should enact the law will fall victim. Let them go and enact the whistleblower protection law. The unserious government in the Muhammadu Buhari government enacted.
Why did you say they were unserious?
And that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
They came up with a whistleblower regime. They are in fact, there was a portal, Ministry of Finance. They are saying whistleblowers, civil servants should come and blow the whistle. Now, there is no whistle, but they have not enacted a whistleblower protection law. You know now what happens? Talk to Chido Onoma of Afric Mail. He will tell you several whistleblowers that have been oppressed. One of them, Federal Minister of Works, when Fashola was minister, he had been sacked, he had been oppressed so much, the thing got to the minister. The minister ordered that he be reinstated, his salaries be paid. Till today, or at least the last time I heard, that never happened. Whistleblowers, anybody who blows the whistle in this country is not just under the threat of sack. Their lives are in danger. Why? Because there is no whistleblower protection. You can't start a whistleblowing regime without a whistleblower protection act. There are acts that are important for us to fight corruption. And let me tell you, 50 years from now, if we don't deal with the issue of corruption, the same problems of development that we have, we will continue to have.
Yeah, I think one of the conversations I've had recently is how Nigeria still has very low quality problems. You have communities that are still dealing with not having water. Talking about underage kids being married off. These are, I feel, as a giant
19th
of
century issues.
Yes.
Yeah, but back to the media, right? I don't know if you've seen this. I think it was Time magazine, but I'm not sure it's Time magazine, and this has to do with reports on people in power, because yes, being defamed is one thing, but does it mean that every time a media house publishes something that someone in government or somebody who is influential and powerful isn't happy with, about? It means that they go under the fire? Because with the whole debacle in America between Biden and Trump, there's this, I think it was Time magazine, I'm not sure, they published something about them. I didn't read the full thing, but you could see both of them in their underwear. Like, obviously it was AI design in their underwear, and maybe talking about their age and the fact that they're still running. And I pictured a Nigerian house, media
that
house,
happening in
running in Nigeria, and I couldn't imagine how that would fly.
So we give that example. You see, that is the bastion of democracy. Look at the videos we see about the last election in the UK, in Britain. The former prime minister goes to talk to people, and somebody looks at him. Shame on you. Get out of here. I don't want to listen to you. He has security people behind him. But because in that society, they understand the dynamics of power, the power dynamics, servant, master. The prime minister is a servant to that person. So what does he do? He apologizes and respects the persons and leaves. In Nigeria, the problem is that the power dynamics are different. The power dynamics are such that the person in government, in any case, and that's part of the problem, elections. Is it somebody who sold 2 houses to seek election? He gets there. Of course, he becomes a teen god. And then he has to steal all the money. So,
get those houses back.
The governor sees himself as God and the people as servants. Whereas it's the other way around. He is the servant to the people. Until we change that power dynamics and we understand. You know, NSAS, I was deep part of NSAS. I was with Mahmoud Abdul, the great oracle on Twitter, at Force headquarters. I was part of, we walked the whole of Abuja, in Abuja. And then I left Abuja, I went to join in Lagos. Because I saw NSAS as that movement that showed that they, and you talk about Gen Zs, that younger Nigerians have an understanding, maybe a bit of understanding of the power dynamics, that they have the power, and that if they come out and insist, their leaders can lead to them, can listen to them. Unfortunately, we allowed, because the leaders saw the reality that these kids have knowledge, and we allow them to continue with that knowledge. We are gone. The power dynamics will change, and they know that they will be done for if that power dynamic changes, and that's why they clamp down on NSAS. And today, there is no win about NSAS unless it starts again, because you know what they're doing? I can't talk about it, but there's an investigation in Lagos now. It's even worse. If you wear any kinky hair and you are in Uber, you know what they do? The police tells you to, Uber drivers told us they will discharge, the policeman will pay how much is your money? 4,000. They will give the Uber driver and discharge you, and they don't know what happens to these kids.
Okay,
have you not heard that policemen are still giving people their account numbers to pay money into, to release them because they arrested them, because they label them as Yahoo boys? If you are wearing rastas and so on, you are a Yahoo boy.
And God help you with a laptop.
Yes, if you have a laptop.
So this leads me to the next question. Power, taking it from the power dynamics thing, what are some other things? I mean, you've already mentioned that. What are some other things you wish Nigerians knew? Taking you back to, when you were making an analogy from the video of the ex-Prime Minister of Britain trying to canvass for votes and what have you. What are some of the things that you wish Nigerians knew? And they knew, one, it will make your job easy, and that of other journalists easier. And then gradually, we can now start seeing a shift.
Well, the thing is, how I wish every Nigerian knows what the law says about a number of things. Our youth, do they even read?
Yeah.
And part of the problem, we have it in newsrooms everywhere. Ask a journalist in a newsroom, do you know Ebitu Kiwe?
You're going too far.
They'll tell you it's a street in Jabi.
You're going, yeah, exactly. That's the most they're going to tell you.
They'll tell you it's a street in Jabi.
You're going too far. Ebitu.
So if they don't know their history, if they don't read, how can they be knowledgeable about these things? I travel. How I wish Nigerians knew, and then they can fight for their rights. Now I travel and my flight is delayed and I'm being treated badly. I go to the counter and I make a lot of noise, because if I come late, I'm on my own. Everywhere I go, I fight for my right. How I wish the ordinary young person is like that. and then we will start to make a difference in pockets of places. So what else do I hope that Nigerians would understand? In different places where we work, let us learn about. So they're stopping you in traffic, you're driving, and the policeman wants to search your car, and he starts searching and you allow him. Do you know what the law says about that? Does he have the right? So for me, and I'm not saying this at 61, I'm saying this is how I've been. I read the law and I tried. Let me say this. I saw, and you laugh so I saw a video. A guy was wearing camouflage top, and some soldiers saw him and they beat him up. And I went and read. There is no law that says I can't wear camouflage.
Do you know?
No,
I'm quite embarrassed to say this, but I thought you can't say.
No, but so let me finish. So last time I traveled, I bought camouflage trousers, top, and cap. No, not camouflage, but green.
Green, yeah.
Maybe they have not stopped me because people say I look like security, I look like soldiers, because where I live, a soldier has stopped me and just did this. I have won it. Let them come and arrest me and tell me what law. Number one, if you see me, I wonder if you are a soldier, if you look at me and you want to beat me up. But even if you take me to anywhere, so you would have to tell me, what law have I broken by wearing green? I'm fashionable. I'm wearing green. So what?
I'll be honest,
I'm fashionable.
I've always known that there's no law against it, but because I've imagined myself
how you will suffer.
not frog jumps in the gym.
But
now,
that's my issue.
We have to suffer for our society
Again,
to change.
low
I'll be honest with you.
Again, low
I've
quality
imagined myself
problems.
doing frog jumps
Why
and
is it
receiving
a
koboko.
problem?
Yeah, exactly.
Why is
that what
why do we
soldiers should be
choose such
thinking about
mundane
now?
things to be
Yes.
upset about? It's like, why?
You know?
Because I honestly want to wear those pants, but
I want to,
I
but
can't do frog jump. I can't even kneel down.
Please don't. Because if you are not crazy like me, I deliberately went out
Maybe I'll call you.
seeking.
I'll call you to come and
But
help
now
me.
I'll stop wearing it, because if they see me, they will start looking for Dayo Aiyetan, where they will see him. Don't worry, I won't wear anything like that again in Nigeria.
Interesting. We'll go on and on and on. So of course, but a lot of takeaways from this, Nigerians need to, and that's one of the reasons why we actually do what we do on devnow, because we realize that development organizations do so much work, and a lot of development organizations are concerned about the implementation.
Of policies.
Of whatever they've agreed with the donor that they're going to do. You know, and visibility now becomes an issue because you're doing so much, but people are not aware, so they're not able to learn from it. I mean, I recall the other time when we had the country director of Engender Health here, where he was talking about VVF, vaginal vesicle
fistula.
Yeah.
And he told us of a lady who, because of ignorance, suffered from that condition for over 30 years. That's one of the reasons why we do what we do on devnow, because we know that many people, no matter what you do, jump on them, put a gun to their eye, they are not going to read. So we're trying to serve it in a manner that they can consume easily. We put out an episode, it's over an hour, yes. Then we cut short videos, 30 seconds, 1 minute plus, and we just, throw them everywhere so that people can hopefully.
So that's one way of reaching people and raising their consciousness about development issues, which are terribly important.
So now for ICIR, what's next?
Well, we'll keep doing what we're doing. I am hoping that the ICIR in the US can get its first funding, and we can start this vision of building capacity for critical accountability reporting, watchdog reporting capacity for other African countries. Last year we would have gone to Rwanda. There's a young chap there who has started a small newsroom. We were supposed to have gone there to build capacity for that newsroom. But so my strategy is, in everything I do, I'm not looking for building capacity for my newsroom. If, for example, I find a need in my newsroom, there's fact-checking capacity that we need to do. If I'm going to bring one person to stay 2 hours, I won't do that for 10 people in my newsroom. I'm looking at, there are other newsrooms that have the same,
Knowledge gap, yeah.
knowledge gap. I usually bring them together, And so we were supposed to go to Rwanda. We actually wanted to contribute some part of the money, but they couldn't raise their part, and we couldn't afford everything, taking people from Nigeria for about 5 days and so on and so forth. And that's why I'm hoping that we'll be able to get the kind of funding we need to do the kind of work, because the same corruption problem and development problem in Nigeria, you find them in Africa.
Yeah.
In fact, in many parts of Africa, it's even worse. So I'm hoping that will be the next level that we want to take. I'm happy with what we have done, with Nigeria. We have trained so many. There is hardly any Nigerian doing critical reporting that has not passed through.
ICIR.
That's amazing.
And that gladdens, if you talk about Fisayo Shoyombo, it's either he was our editor or he has received funding, from us before. Majid Alabi, so many of them, and we still have some of them who work for the ICIR.
Beautiful.
Are you hopeful for Nigeria?
Wow. So, you see, the same question I was asked when I went to Amnesty International office in New York, and we were talking about the situation of press freedom just in 2 months ago. And I was asked, so with all that's happening, particularly happening to me and my organization, I've given 35 years of my life, of my career to this. And for an old person like me, I think that I can't give up hope now, because it means that my life has been used. So maybe because of that, I will say I'm still very hopeful. But sincerely speaking, it's so easy for hope to die for people in Nigeria. And that is why many people, many of these young ones, I don't blame them. And I think the National Assembly is just a pack of jokers, that they want to create a law to prevent lawyers from moving to better places. There's no way we can stop these kids. The only way is, let's put Nigeria right. When I finished university, this same syndrome of young people jackpying is not a new thing.
It's not a new syndrome.
I finished university in 1986. I served Rima Radio Sokoto. I finished in 1987. And I started, work. Many of my friends, many of my colleagues, at that point, we were thinking that, it is people who didn't have any hope of succeeding in Nigeria and so on. So many of us said, no, we are proud of the work. We'll look for work. We didn't have a job, but Nigeria was still a hopeful place at that time. Is Nigeria a hopeful place any longer? I have a friend. He has 5 kids. Only one of them was abroad as at the end of last year. As I speak to you, all of them, the remaining 4, including one who was in secondary school, he just lost hope for Nigeria. And we have a pack of leaders who have absolutely no interest in the common man. Do you know, I said at a gathering, do you know there are people who don't touch 1,000 naira in a week? And some people said 1,000. There are people who don't touch 100 naira in a week. And we have people who their only concern is to buy yachts. How about? Their only concern is to buy presidential aircraft. I know how many presidential aircraft we have or had. I covered the villa. These are people who don't have the love of Nigerians at heart. And it shows. Because when we are talking about minimum wage, about inflation and so on, if we cut down on government spending, the House of Reps have offered, the members have offered to cut half of their salary. They are not doing any Nigerians any favor. Do you know how much they earn? They don't deserve that money they earn. They don't even deserve a quarter of how much they earn. They don't. Seriously, let us look at
No, I agree with you.
Let us look at governance.
Yeah.
Look, where I sit, I know what happens in government. If they cut down on the business of government,
Yeah.
one member of the House of Reps, one senator, is paid to hire assistants, up to 6-7 of them. No. And I had, I had gone to Washington Post, I had gone to New York Times, I had gone to Wall Street Journal, I had gone to different places. I knew I didn't have the money. And I also knew that, in many parts of the world, critical journalism was being funded by donor foundations. And I took that route. That's number one. The second thing I decided was, I have no business with newspaper. That is hard copy, distributing, printing.
It's a lot of money. Because
at that time, we went to New York Times and they said they had 3 printing presses. They had sold them and they had outsourced their printing. And I learned that the newspaper as a means of communicating news was a dying phenomenon, culture.
Became a dinosaur.
Even when you buy suya these days, when you buy suya these days, they don't wrap it in newspaper anymore. These days,
because there are no newspapers. How many?
Back then,
that's right.
Back then, you know, if I didn't read the news before the day before,
you just
if
buy
I
suya.
buy suya,
So the work of the ICIR has been successful only because of our donors. Where today we early this month we moved into our own office. We have, I was telling you, we have a world-class studio. When I started the ICIR, we didn't have a penny. And we have moved from there to today where we have our own place. We have our own studio. We are thinking of sustainability.
Oh, it's a studio.
We have a world-class studio. We can do, even if you want to sing, and we can produce your music.
Bumi, are you ready?
Wow.
So all this has come because of our donors. From the first grant we got, $200,000 from Ford Foundation.
Wow.
And the way it works is, I tell people, when Fisaya Shiombo started FIJ, for example, it was, for all of us, it's difficult starting. And I say, look, you know what will work for you? Just do your work and put it out there. They will come looking for you. And that's what happened.
Consistency over time.
Consistently do your work. Let us see what you're doing. Out of the blues, Ford Foundation came. Paul Lubulu was a program officer. And years later, I asked him, Paul is Igbo, I'm Yoruba. We didn't know each other from Adam. You didn't know me, and you took the gamble. They gave us 200. Do you know what that means? $200,000. When I heard it, now testimony.
You almost fainted. Praise the Lord.
President General.
And he said, look, Dayo, and this is important. He said, look, Dayo, the first year you came to us, you needed institutional funding, and we didn't have institutional funding. But the second year, you didn't come. But when you came, you spoke so passionately about what you wanted. It was believable. And part of what we wanted, I spoke about, was that, there was such a knowledge gap in Nigeria. When you travel, you hear all kinds of things. Even you as a senior person, you are lost. I want to develop Kappa. He said, now that we have money to do that, we'll give you the money to do that. And 200,000, we could do anything we wanted with it, you know. And then MacArthur grant came. MacArthur has just been something else, not just for the ICIR. The MacArthur country director, deputy country director, Dayo, who has left now, he is in Nigeria. I hope I can talk. Yes. And we were talking about the impact that MacArthur Foundation, led by Dr. Kole Shettima, has had in the Nigerian civic space. We started with the media. Today, many of us, it's not just the ICIR that has its own building, its own, office. It's a whole lot of us, because we are able to save enough. Those who are visionary, because there might be some who are
not visionary and
dancing, but they have stable, and not just about physical things. At a point, I called Dr. Kole Shettima. I reminded him when. I said, do you know that I fear for you, because my fear was that we will do this story. They know the sign-off is funded by MacArthur. They will do this story. Premium Times will do its own. Daily Trust. They will come and arrest you that you are hitting up the polity. Dr. Shettima, of course you know him. He did not see anything. He smiled, but I know that they would have gone to him to question him several times about the work they are doing, because MacArthur has done so much, not just for the media, but for the civic space. How many media organizations? Is it Connected Development? Is it CISLAC? Is it Budget? So many of us that they have helped us to. I'm sure that without MacArthur funding, the ICIR would not have been able to do the kind of work it has done in the last 7 years. Unfortunately, the MacArthur on Nigeria project ends in 2024, and we don't know what's going to come. Of course, we have also had our National Endowment for Democracy grant. I was a fellow at NED in 2010, and my project in NED, I was a Regan Fassel fellow, and my project in NED actually was setting up the ICIR. So interestingly, I came back and I was looking for funding. There was no funding. I went back to Washington and I called a meeting, and I lambasted everybody in the room, and I said, you guys are like midwives. And when the baby is about to be born, you abandon the baby. That's what you did to the ICIR. I blackmailed. And the next year we got our very first funding from NED. It worked, and today NED is that funder that is helping the ICIR with what we call institutional funding. So it helps to pay for salaries for our 2 newsrooms, the ICIR Investigative Reporting Newsroom and the Fact Check Hub. We also, so all our investigations you find on the website are also done with NED funding. We also have one of our biggest funders now, funding partner. We are doing several projects concurrently with them, is the International Budget Partnership. They are very quiet with their work, but so the Spark project, there are 2 entry points: health. We're looking at PHCs, health care delivery across Nigeria. We're also looking at agriculture, particularly smallholder women farmers. Women form 70% of the Nigerian farming workforce. But they get, when inputs, loans, and so on are going. The men take all.
The men take everything.
The men take everything, and so we're scrutinizing that process. We're looking at policies and why that this what's it called? This male-dominated world where the women are the ones who are doing all the farming, and the men, the men are the ones who are taking all the largesse. So we're looking at that with IBP. The other interesting project we're doing with IBP funding is tax justice. On the part of the ordinary person, particularly small business people, SMEs, are they paying enough tax? But we're also looking at the part of government. The tax we are paying, what in they can do. And so those are the projects. I hope to God that I have not missed out anyone
so
or
what
else.
we're going to do, and which we always do, is would liaise with your team and then get all the partners. If you had left anyone out, then we'll just slap their logos
display it on the screen.
Okay.
So that everybody.
When they see this, you are free of any.
Yeah.
But they say,
my logo is not
my
there.
logo is not there.
You will hear from me.
I'm sure. I'm sure I've not left out anyone. But Osiwa funded us once during COVID, and that was an important grant we got. And like I said before, I'm being very frank. When I'm looking at a problem, I'm not looking at solving a problem in the ICIR. I'm looking at it as a media problem. So COVID came. Some of the journalists on our projects are, journalists who have set up small newsrooms of about 2-3 people, and they won't be able to do their work. In 1 year, they will die. So we approached Osiwa and said, look, can we work with these small newsrooms? In fact, we called it micro newsrooms. If you are more than 5, we are not interested. 5 to 8. Can we work in terms of providing resilience for them? Number one, I think we were giving them every month 300,000 naira to be able to buy airtime, do transportation, and so on and so forth. And then we also provided training for them and some mentoring. And that was how, at least I know 3 of them were able to survive. But for that, well, we don't know what might have happened, but that was something that was really, really great that Osiwa did. I think I've covered all.
Okay. Well,
I just have to say this. You can cut it out of the show, but I'm just going to say, something I observed, because everything you've been through, you say you've been doing this since you were 26. I did the math. 26, yeah. So you said you've been doing this for 35 years. I was going to say, it is a wonder, with everything you've been through, your life being in danger, your work being in danger, that and at 61 you still have a full hairline.
How do you know? How do you know I'm 61?
You said it.
But I just mentioned an age.
I repeat it.
So maybe you're 25, really. Maybe you're
I'm 40.
No, you still have a full hairline, and I'm like, wow, that's amazing.
But look at this.
But the hair is full, but
see the gray hair.
No, the gray is fine. I have a friend.
For them, grey.
I have a friend. He's barely.
Sexy, yeah.
I have a friend who's old. Like he's barely 36 and he's bald. I mean, Bumi's
yeah.
going back.
Who's going with? Who's going with? Which hair is going with? Which hair?
No, but you know the truth.
What's the trick?
I love what I'm doing. I'll tell you the trick. I love what I'm doing, and there's nothing in the world else I would rather do.
No.
Sincerely.
So no regrets.
So let me tell you. I'm not a rich person, but what I tell journalists, instead of enmeshing yourself in brown envelope journalism and being beholden to politicians, why can't you build skills in yourself? There is so much. You see, Oyinbo man don't do journalism so well to the extent that there are several areas you can focus on and build yourself up. We are doing a lot of that. So our data guy handles our data training. Our social media guy, you know, there are so many, and we're trying to do this. One of the work we have done that I've not talked about is the work we're doing on campuses. So we're trying to catch them young. We're teaching journalists life skills. The one we have done is in the combating misinformation project. So we went to 12 universities, and not just the mass comm department. The students will bring themselves together. We had a 3-day session with them, teaching them about research, tools to debunk fake news, and so on and so forth. But if we had left it at that, it will all have died out. So what we did is we are developing fact check clubs in all the schools. Even though the German embassy, so the German embassy and the American embassies have also supported us. The German embassy funded the combating misinformation project. The American embassy an accountability project in the Northwest. Even though that grant has ended, we are supporting each of those 12 universities to develop a fact-check hub. Yeah, so what they do is, from time to time, they have this program, they call us, we send them branding T-shirts, we give them money for banner, give them some money, maybe 100, 200,000 to do tea break, buy drinks, and so on. So that is also something that we're doing.
That's amazing. Wow. Really catching them young.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Well, we have to draw the curtain here. Again, we have to say a very big thank you to our guests for coming through. And
don't botch his name.
What?
Don't botch his name.
No, his name is Mr. Aiyetan.
Okay.
Aiyetan.
Yeah, and it's been a whole journey looking at it from Concord to TEL to ICIR, what he's done.
Do you know a newspaper called Sketch?
Yeah.
No, I don't know.
Oh no, Gen Z, you can't.
I've heard of the movie called Sketch.
You can't know Sketch.
I've never read it, but I swear I've heard it.
So I worked in Sketch before coming to Concord.
Then
And you can imagine.
I'm thinking of a restaurant.
Well, we were not deceived for a moment.
It's a restaurant in Abuja.
We were not deceived for a moment.
Sketch. How?
Did you know a newspaper called Hints?
Hints.
Oh, you do know Hints? Wow.
Please edit that part. Hints. What do you mean? Anyway, all we can say is a very big thank you to our guest for coming through today, bringing us into his world. Giving us a deep dive, all expense paid tour on what he's been doing and what they're going to do next. All we can say is well done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
For coming on DevNow, and we wish you the best in your future endeavors.
Thank you for all the work you do. It's so brave and definitely inspiring. I am inspired. Bumi has been inspired since day one. So thank you.
For the DevNow audience, it's a wrap. Please like, follow, share the videos. Share. It not cost you just one button. Share the videos.
Yes.
Of course, we'll also put up the social media handles of ICIR there. They're very, very active online. You can engage them and what have you. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Catch you on the next one.